Hey, Austin friends, it's Chris Mosier. This Tuesday, February 17th is a big deal for two reasons. It's the first day of early voting in the 2026 primary, and it's also Fat Tuesday. If you're a sustaining monthly supporter of Progress Texas, you're invited to celebrate that fun happenstance with me on Tuesday evening from 5 to 7, and your first beverage is on me. See your email for the location, and what's that? You say you haven't become a sustaining monthly supporter of Progress Texas yet? Well, let's fix that right now at progresstexas.org/donate and hope to see you on Tuesday.
Okay, you gotta tell Jack about the dowry.
Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. Communications Director Chris Mosier here, continuing to highlight the candidates across the great state of Texas who are fighting for progressive change in a year when it would appear our hopes and dreams are that tides are rising to support their individual votes. And one 2026 candidate who you may know from, places outside of the political sphere, perhaps, or even through our podcast, is Sara McGee, who is running in Texas House District 132, which is down in the Houston area. And Sara, as I say, is a well-known person outside of this political thing. First of all, welcome, Sara McGee. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
For sure. So I'm going to say something I don't typically say to people that we interview, and that is that I will admit being just a little bit starstruck here.
Oh, my God.
Because Sara has become a little bit of a social media phenomenon, especially on the Elon Musk purchase platform that I will always call Twitter, which is where she recently, and this is awesome, got a retweet from one of my personal all-time musical and political heroes, Tom Morello, the guitar player for Rage Against the Machine. So the first question, Sara, I want to ask is, do you have a full understanding of how badass that is?
Yes, I absolutely, in fact, I think I quote tweeted his quote tweet, and I was like, one day you're up against him in Guitar Hero, and the next day he's quote tweeting you. I'm like, is this real life? Like, I about dropped my phone, texted everybody that I know.
That is wild.
Yeah.
That is so wild. And for those, there are people in our audience who may not know exactly who Tom Morello is. This is Rage Against the Machine is one of the sources for me of my very political foundations as a young person, listening to their music and their messages and their style and the whole bit. I mean, a good bit of what makes me tick comes from that band. So that's a really amazing person to be associated with now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're telling me. I also had George Takei, who he's no longer on.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Wow.
I know. Yeah,
Sulu.
He's no longer on Twitter, but he's on a screenshot of one of my tweets relating to Planned Parenthood. Got screenshotted and shared on all of his social media platforms. So Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I had people calling me like, "Hey, I know you," and I was like, it was ending up in like non-political group chats. I was like, "What is going on? Like, this is wild, like wild."
Okay, so you, in summary, you have built a social media platform that's getting the attention of people like that. And you've built these huge followings, and I don't know if it's limited to Twitter or if it's other places too, but give us a little bit on how this happened. How did you develop this massive social media presence? And is it just Twitter or is it other places? Tell us about it.
Right. So I would say probably about 25,000 across all platforms, 21 of that being on Twitter. I'm still trying to grow the other platforms, especially with video content. And like, I'm trying to get my TikTok going. I'm at about 1,500 on TikTok. But my problem is I'm really bad at speaking like direct to camera. I'm good at this because I'm talking to somebody. Yeah, and I'm good at talking to people in real life, but I can't just hold my camera and talk to it. Like, it feels so unnatural and impersonal. And so
I get that.
And you have to do that to do TikTok. So
for sure.
I'm working on that. But in Blue Sky, I'm at like 2,000. But the Twitter thing, like if politics doesn't work out, I wish there was something I could like write down in like some secret formula or something that I could like, offer to like teach people or train people. But the God's honest truth is I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because a lot of Democrat politicians, especially, at the state level, don't participate on Twitter. And the only reason I even started using that account was because that's one of the only places where the Texas Republican state legislatures or legislators will post.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I have to get on here to, start to wrap my head around it and, keep an eye on them. And, I start punching back a little bit and then, get a couple followers. And then I would punch back about this and then get a couple followers. And then I started doing the whole, like they would post about what a policy is intended to do and completely twist it. And so I started doing a few of the, well, actually what this law does is this, and this, like they make it sound all great, but these are the actual things. And then it just kept growing from there. And, the crazy thing is like, it's not focus grouped. It's not, tested in front of an audience. It's not like I'm not being advised on how to. The only difference between what I write on Twitter and in real life is I tend to curse a little bit more in real life. Like I try.
See,
if I'm being completely honest, like the real me is even more colorful than what you get online.
Hey, man.
If that's
I'm a fan. I'm a
Yeah.
fan. And I think so. We gave a talk at just over this last weekend at the Texas Democratic Women's Convention in Austin. And part of our talk was about social media, how to do the kind of videos that you're talking about, this kind of stand up, facing your phone sort of videos that are kind of intimidating and weird for people to get used to. And we've gotten pretty good at it here. And a lot of that to me has to do with authenticity and has to do with, actually coming from where you really live and what's really in your head and in your heart.
Yeah.
I think that's probably central to your secret sauce, I would think. Is being yourself and being an interesting person. Twitter is weird though, because, I find my personal Twitter, honestly, and maybe people just hate me, but it tends to underperform, when I really think I've really nailed somebody good and it'll just go nowhere. And then I'll have something go, but I've gotten to where I feel like Twitter's kind of squelching me. I think they don't want to hear from me. So I'm not sure I'm getting very good penetration there.
Right. And I wish that there was some formula that I had figured out because I have no idea either. Like I tweeted about Dolly Parton and got like 5 million views. And I was like, What is this?
Hey, everybody loves Dolly Parton though.
Well, true, but I wasn't, and then I'll tweet something that I'm like, oh man, this is a really good point. And like, 1,000. And I'm like, okay, like, but I don't, the craziest thing about it is like, obviously I see those things, but that's not my campaign. It's not real life. Like I keep telling people, I'm like, this is a side project, being quote tweeted by Tom Morello is like amazing. And I'm like, this is so cool. But like ultimately at the end of the day, like it's a tool to help me like do what I want to do, which is, win my campaign. And that's work for that happens like on the ground in real life.
Yes. That's where I was going to go next is, the social media following that you've built is a nationwide, if not global sort of thing, which is not the same as something that's going to be able to surgically help you right there in your district necessarily.
Right.
Or is it? Tell us about how you've been able to utilize this platform in your race, and maybe are there limitations to what that can accomplish in a given geographic area?
I will tell you, it actually, so using it, not my reach necessarily, but just talking to the voices of people that I don't necessarily come across in my day-to-day life. I do hang out in a lot of Democratic circles, and you tend to gravitate towards people that you share values with and that you're comfortable with. And so obviously the hate comes, and there's been absolutely horrible things that have been said, but there's also been a lot of really good productive conversations with people from the other side that have helped form my conversations that I have with people in real life. But I will say this election cycle, and I have Republican friends that tell me that I picked a good time to be a Democrat because
I think so.
Especially, well, I didn't choose I picked a good time to run as a Democrat. Like I've been a Democrat, but Yeah, because I'll have people tell me they're like, they're like, we're so fed up, like specifically with what's happening in Texas, like with public schools and
Oh yeah.
property tax relief promises that never come, and like the water crisis is starting to become a louder issue than I had never, because we don't necessarily face that where I live, but it's starting to trickle into my community, like the talking about it. So I'm like, that's great. Like we really need to be on top of this. Um,
And
and yeah,
you're talking about the kind of Katy Cy-Fair sort of area, right?
yes.
Is where you are. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so basically all of West Harris County. Like my
Yeah.
district goes from like I butt up against the Waller County line on one side and the Fort Bend County line on the other side, but it's all of like West Harris County.
Hmm. So tell us about, we kind of got off into the social media deal, but yes, the reason you're here is because you're running. Let's talk about, actually, let's kind of dovetail back into where we were there. Tell us about what the folks that you're running into as you go out, not on your screen, but in you right there in person.
Yeah.
What are people in your district worried about? What do they expect of, whoever their next representative is in the Texas House? Hopefully you. What do they want? What do they need?
The number one, because my district encompasses Katy ISD and Cy-Fair ISD, and those are two like destination districts. Like when people are transferred to Houston from all over the country and they're looking at where am I gonna live, where am I gonna buy a home, and they start researching schools. Those two districts are places where people move. And it was the school board races that for actually first woke people up, because you got these people in school boards who are like, banning books and cutting down bus routes. And in Sci-Fair, they actually like we made national news because they were actually removing entire chapters
Yeah.
out of the state approved curriculum textbooks. That's what first got people involved. And so over the last year, like this entire district has woken up, and it is this huge coalition to go to the mat to save our public schools. And so it started with flipping the school boards, but then obviously in the middle of that, vouchers passed. And so, I mean, I'm talking, you have an army of suburban moms that are like, oh no, get out of here with that nonsense. And the most ironic thing is, they always go a little too far. People in power always go just a step too far, and they don't know how far it is until they've actually taken that step. And I will tell you, in infiltrating our school boards with people with these really crazy radical ideas,
Yeah.
was what finally got school board meetings are supposed to be boring. Like
Yeah.
you're not supposed, when clips of school board meetings are ending up on social media, like that's not a good thing. Like you
Yeah.
don't want that to happen. And so specifically in my area, they just want calm, they want common sense. They want like these super radical far right. Nobody agrees with the 10 commandments. Like they took so many steps this year that so many people are like,
Yeah.
enough.
Well, it eventually becomes kind of an attempt to re-engineer the rules on the ground and kind of move the Overton window, as it were.
Yeah.
And we've talked about for years. It's really kind of been a political reality since the founding of this country that the party in power tends to overreach a little bit, which tends to swing the pendulum back the other way. And we've seen that over and over and over. I would say the district that you're running in, and especially at the school board level, is probably the most extreme and egregious example of people who just forgot completely that there are folks in the district who don't agree with their crazy ideas. As though they just completely went power mad and just started doing insane, crazy things that now I think, as part of that same mathematics is going to drag that pendulum back really, really hard. So as you said a second ago, it's probably a pretty good time to be running as a Democrat in that part of Texas.
I'm telling you. And the people on the ground, like they're paying so much attention and seeing what happened in SD9. Like we're the southern version of that district, because they fight super hard for their schools as well. And they have recently flipped their school boards. And then, Fort Worth ISD has recently been taken over by the state. We are a very and now Greg Abbott is coming after Sci-Fair because they were going to host, the Islamic games that they've done every single year. Every single year. And so we have so much in common with the district that just widely swung to the other way that I'm like, people are like, have you done polling? And I'm like, couple things. One, I mean, I don't have a primary opponent. Two, even if I
Yeah.
did, Democrats at state level races, we don't have the budget for polling. Like we just,
Right.
we don't have the budget for polling. But I'm like, if there is anything that's a free poll, it's looking at exactly what happened in a very similar situation, demographic makeup, everything that just happened in Tarrant County is very relevant to what we're facing down in Katy and Cypress.
It's
Um,
it's wild that
yeah,
this early, it's only, we're in February here. We've got to go till, past the primary all the way to November. And
Chris.
there are already just these quite dramatic examples of what might be coming
Mhm.
if it can be sustained. I mean, if I was a Republican right now, I'd be quaking in my boots for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So let's dial back a second again and talk about your race in particular. Your opponent, since you don't have a primary opponent, your eyes are on November at this point,
Hmm. Hmm.
and your eyes are on the incumbent Republican Mike Schofield, who, from my perspective, we focus statewide here at Progress Texas, and Mike Schofield is not necessarily a guy who pops out like a Briscoe Kane or a Nate Schatzline or like a truly egregious like MAGA Crusader character type person. He's a lot more kind of buttoned down and quiet. Tell us about him in particular. There was something that happened between you guys personally that fired up this thing for you. Talk about that.
Yeah, so it's funny. The one and only time I've talked to him is the entire reason that I'm running. So I tell this story as it's like my origin story. Last fall, my kids are 22 and 24. And so up until this last, election cycle, like I was still raising kids and working and, doing all this stuff. And so this last election cycle in 2024, I was like, oh, okay, like my kids are grown now. Like I actually have time. I was like, let me get out and actually volunteer, like do more than just voting and talking, to my Facebook friends. And so I spent the fall, like I did some block walking for the Senate race and phone banking and text banking for the, presidential race. And I'm sitting in my bed on a Saturday afternoon texting people in Michigan, telling them to vote for Kamala. And it was the first day of early voting. And I took my daughter, she was 21 at the time. And I was like, because it was her first time voting in a presidential election. So we were all like fired up. We were going to go
Super
vote and
fun.
then go to dinner afterwards. And anyway, so Schofield was there and I had never met him. And just, it's almost embarrassing to say at this point, had not really, like so many other Texans, I hadn't paid a ton of attention to state level politics,
Mm-hmm.
like so many others. I was looking, at the national level. And so I was like, you know what? Let me go talk to him. I was like, they tell you to talk to your representatives. And so I walked up and, oh man, looking back now, I just like laughably naive because I was like, doing what I do for a living. I mentioned earlier, like I work in radiology. And so I had seen like the real world effects on what had happened immediately after the abortion ban was passed.
Mm-hmm.
So the delays in care, the, doctors not knowing how to handle it, being scared that they're going to lose their license and get, sued, and women who are having to have follow-up ultrasounds and follow-up lab work. And, are you septic? Are you not septic? It
Ugh,
was a
wow.
total nightmare. And I was just like, maybe if I go and tell him this, like he'll understand. Like I said, so naive because I did. Like I walked up and told him like several real life stories of how this had had, impact on people. And he basically called me a liar to my face.
Wow.
Like he told me that it was because the doctors didn't understand the law or that the law was super clear, even though it was written by a lawyer and not a physician. And hundreds of OBGYNs have written letters asking them to change it. And I mean, it's been modified slightly now, but so that conversation, I mean, I walked out of there like because I've lived like I was I was born in Dallas, but I moved to my district when I was 3, and I have lived in my district for 42, almost 43 years. In different parts, like I grew up in Katy, and I live on the Cypress part now, but always in 132. Like every house I've lived in since I was 3 years old is in 132,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just immediately got this like big like protective vibe over
Sure.
my community because
Sure.
like he's from Jersey and he worked for Rick Perry and
Wait, wait,
like
wait. He's from New Jersey?
yeah.
That makes me think of the paste pecani sauce, New Jersey.
Right. I'm like, he doesn't even go here. Anyway, and so it's funny, like that one conversation, I was like, this guy is representing like my friends, my family, my kids' friends, my kids' friends' families. Like, I just got this huge like protective vibe, and that literally has been fueling this entire adventure.
Well, and dialing back just a second, I mean, he in that moment gave you what at that time was the Republican talking points. Like
Yeah.
that's
Oh
what
yeah.
what he told you was what he would have said into a news camera. Or at a at a hearing at the Capitol or whatever. That was what they were all saying. They were all trying to blame the doctors at the time, and it hadn't changed a whole hell of a lot since then, really.
Yeah.
So that to me illuminates the disconnect and again back to this idea of this unlimited power and this lack of accountability to the voters, that you would treat an individual voter who has walked up to you and tried to share their expertise and their personal experience with this bullshit,
Yeah.
Republican talking point stuff. I mean, what a terrible that's like a basic to me, like the basic skills of a politician is knowing the difference between talking into a camera and talking to an individual constituent who's walked up to engage with you. So
Right.
that's a wild story.
Right, which is so funny because I've actually so that was my first interaction with him ever, and I have learned over the course of the last 14 months because not a lot of, well, I say I've mentioned it several times, but my reaction to the 2024 election results was to file for office. Like, I filed my paperwork like a week after the election. Like, that's
Wow.
how, like, I was like, no, no, we're not doing this.
See, that's
Um
why when we first started talking, I was asking Sarah if it was her first time to run or not.
yeah,
That's why I thought you had run before, because you've been doing this for a long time
for a
already.
long time,
Yeah.
super
Okay.
early. I just can't imagine that I wasn't like the first one. I think I was the very first one to file. So
Nice.
anyway, and so over the course of the last 14 months, I haven't met a single person who likes this man. And I'm talking like bipartisanly. Like, I have people, and obviously I'm not going to name names, but I have people that, school board, city council, everything, that are like, when he shows up at one of our events, we're just like, ooh. And like, we
Yeah.
have to like stand and like take pictures with him, and then, be like, oh, thank you for coming. And then like the second he leaves, we're like, great, go back to Austin and vote against our, vote against our needs. Like,
Right. Right.
and these are, I call them Republican lights, like the non-MAGA Republicans. They can't stand them either.
Do you think that there was a point in time where a guy like Mike Schofield could just be ignored, like you're talking about? He just part of the furniture, whatever. It's a reliably Republican district, whatever. It's just your plug-in generic Republican to stick him in there and move along.
Mhm.
But things have changed in the last
Yeah.
couple of years. Talk
Yes.
about that. Tell us your perception of how I would let's try to include everybody, but perhaps kind of in the middle, moderates, people who are kind of rethinking old votes, or people who are, just normal folks. How has the political wind changed in the district?
Yeah, so that's the craziest thing about my district is it flipped during the midterms of Trump's first term.
Right.
And they've redistricted since then. They cut out a little part to make 135, which is John Rosenthal's district. We share a border, like a fairly large border.
Mm-hmm.
They cut out a little part to give him, like, to make his a solid D district. But the meat and potatoes of my district are still the same. And so and in fact, from what I understand, the establishment was so angry with him for losing in 2018, that they primaried him in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg Abbott backed a candidate to primary him in 2020 because they got mad at him because he didn't, he really wasn't campaigning, because he doesn't. Like, he goes to donor dinners and then, puts yard signs out and like just gets elected. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so he lost in 2018, barely got it back in 2020. And then, we know like 2022 was just by a few thousand. And then obviously we know 2024 was a bad year for everyone, but it was, like, enough people know his name in the community that it was just kind of checking a box. But he doesn't go a ton of places because, especially now, He constantly gets questioned on his vote
Yeah.
for vouchers.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like being put into an uncomfortable, situation. But like I said, even Republicans, like I've had Republicans that have told me stories. They're like, I have been trying to get a meeting with that man for like 5 years. And
Yeah.
he just consistently ignores me. A few people have even like made their way to Austin, like actually got a hold of his staff, got an appointment, made their way to Austin, and then he got busy doing something or had to
Yeah.
go into committee or, so like literally traveled 2.5, 3 hours, depending on where in the district you live, to go meet with him. And he has ignored them. And and we're done. Like we're done. And like I said, like this is my community. Like I have a lot of, people talk about Katie, like I know maybe 10% of the people I went to high school with that have left Katy and the rest of them stayed. Like,
Okay.
because it's a good place to be and it's a good
Sure.
place to raise a family and it's a good, community. And so many people, like I still, I'm 45 years old and I can't go to the grocery store without seeing somebody I know. Like that's just my community. And so I know
Yeah, I
people.
was going to say that's what you call a community, and that's I'll tell you what, that Sarah, that's a commodity that so
Yeah.
many people miss and so many people don't have. It's a blessing for sure.
Yeah. And like my stepdad's a retired Methodist minister from a, very well respected member of the Methodist community in my district. Like I have people and connections and deep roots like at every corner. And so when people are like, oh, you're a nominee or you're just a social media person, I think that's the downside. Yeah, I think that's the downside of getting the Twitter following is I'm constantly dismissed as like an influencer candidate. And I'm like, no,
How weird.
it's very weird because I'm like, what is this? Like, you're talking to someone that literally until 14 months ago, my social media consisted of a TikTok with like 5 followers where I'd post videos of my dog and like a personal Facebook page. Like that was that was it.
That's
And
funny.
now I have people telling me I'm some social media influencer candidate, and I'm like, oh no, stop! Like stop.
Well, that's we've gone through and to sidetrack just a little bit, we have gone through this affair with Colin Allred and James Tallarico, which was set off by testimony that came from an influencer person,
Yeah.
which was largely uncorroborated, but Colin Allred ran with it, and so. Anyway,
Yeah.
my point is
Yeah.
that the role of influencers has become something that is a little bit of a topic out there.
It is.
But I would say, like we were talking about before, to me, I think you've built your social media thing based on just being a genuinely cool person and wanting what's best for your district. I mean, that's the vibe I get from you talking to you here.
Yeah.
Tell me, so we're coming up kind of on the end here. Give me your little, your elevator pitch real quick to, undecided voter you've run into in the district. Give us your couple, 3 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, really, this election is about saving public education in Texas. And it doesn't just affect people who have kids in school. It affects everyone because the worse or the lower the funding that they provide for our public education systems and our public schools get worse and worse, it affects property taxes, or I'm sorry, it affects property values. It affects whether or not people move there. It affects, if kids start moving out of district, it's going to affect, funding for other local services. Like it's just our communities and really all Texas communities, but very specifically the heart of our district is built around our public schools. So that's number one. Another thing, people in my district are struggling with things that everybody else is struggling with, like healthcare costs. And very uniquely working in healthcare, I can speak to it that the fewer people who have healthcare coverage, the more expensive it becomes for everybody because they have to, parse that risk out to a fewer number of insured people. And so I don't think a lot of people take that into account when they have the I'm not paying for that kind of attitude, because unfortunately you are, because uncovered care gets wrapped up into the overall cost of healthcare. So the fewer people that have insurance, the more expensive it's going to be for every single person down the line.
That's right.
And so I wish more people knew that. So that's another thing. And then lastly, property taxes, which are a huge thing. And I know that's not usually a progressive topic to talk about, but just in contrast to what Greg Abbott is doing, and this is so frustrating because if Greg Abbott wanted our property taxes to be lower, if he wanted homeowners to have property tax relief, we would already have it. Like the state is sitting on like a $24 billion budget surplus, a $30 billion rainy day fund. If he wanted us to feel relief, we would have gotten it this year. I think I crunched the numbers on how many homestead exemptions are filed each year in Texas and how much of a budget surplus we had. And we could have had like an average of $4,000 relief per homeowner. And obviously that shouldn't have all gone to the homeowners. That should have been sparsed out to the renters too. But we should have, we could have had this relief. But this is what he does. It's the same thing he did with school funding. He withheld any increases for inflation to school funding for 6 years, didn't touch it past 2019 to kind of twist the arms of people until they cried uncle and voted for vouchers. And so like, oh, okay, I finally got what I wanted. So here's the thing. And so now his plan is to completely eliminate school district property taxes to give people property tax relief. And his promise is, oh, well, we're gonna cut your property taxes by eliminating the school district tax. And people are so desperate for relief at this point that they might actually vote for that when they don't realize what that means is Greg Abbott just said out loud that he's going to fully defund public schools.
Right.
Because what happens
right.
when we don't have a surplus?
Right.
And there's not a way to pay for public schools. He's gonna be like, oh, well, there's no money. Oh, they need to fire teachers. Oh, they need to put 50 kids per classroom.
Right.
It is all part of his plan to kill public education, and he does it by just twisting the knife into people until they beg him for relief.
Of course, when that house of cards falls, of course now the private schools are all nicely funded, and so now all you have to do is go into debt to put your third grader in school.
I know.
So that God knows where that's going to go, and that's
in a
almost
school with no testing, no accountability, none of this weird state grading system that is completely non-transparent on how they come up with these grades. Like, it's something that I want to say we don't talk about a lot, but I definitely talk about it a lot in person on the ground every day.
Yeah, we do too. The situation with our schools is damn near dystopian in the near future if we're not careful with it.
Yeah.
Sara, this has been a great talk. Let me hit you with one last kind of a curveball question. You've been at this for a little while. Again, with the social media thing, you very much put yourself out there. Talk about what you've learned about yourself. Is there anything that you've found yourself extraordinarily strong on? Anything that you found to be more painful than you expected it to be? What have you learned about yourself in this experience so far?
So what have I learned? Because I don't know. Well, first of all, I learned something that I kind of already knew, but this is definitely reinforced, that I have zero quit. Like, I will not quit. I might take half a day and cry it out because I'm not going to lie. It does. Yeah. Like when I was shared on the Libs of TikTok page for like a full 48 hours, I had every single social media account that I have was being completely bombarded with, attack messages and, stuff like that. And I had family members that were really concerned, and they were like, do you want to do this? And I'm like sitting there and I'm scared, and like I'm beefing up the security in my house, and I'm warning my job, like, hey, you might get calls. Like, it was bad. And then I just sat and thought, and like I said, I had family members that were like, are you sure you want, to do this? And never for a second, I was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, this sucks. I was like, but what's the alternative? Quitting? I was like, no. I was like, I'm not going to quit. Like, I'm not going to quit. Like, this is, like, I started this because I want to represent my community, and I'm going to finish it by representing my community. Like, I'm not going to quit. Like, if I quit, they win. Like, you're not going to bully me out of this race, which is what they're attempting to do. So, right. So I think I've just reinforced more, but also, like I said, I didn't have a big social media presence, and I've definitely learned to brush it off now, but the mean, brutal comments on Twitter were really difficult for me to adjust to.
Right.
Because I'm not used to being called things that I won't repeat.
Horrible.
Verbally. Yeah. I was just like, oh my God, like, I'm a good person. Why are these people being so mean to me? And I know that makes me sound like a big old snowflake, but, I learned how to use the mute list,
Yep.
the muted word list. So there's words that, hey, Twitter, you can call me whatever you want. I'm never
Yeah.
going to see it. Like,
throw your damnedest at us. Yeah, and something else kind of right out of the headlines right now, we're seeing the same kind of treatment going to Olympic athletes who dare to
oh, I
question the
know.
regime.
Yeah.
So
I mean, apparently the First Amendment's over now.
it's a lesson to anybody who, people, stick their foot out there and their foot gets bit by somebody. That session we were talking about earlier that we did with the Texas Democratic women, what I said is, when you put something out there that draws a whole bunch of MAGA hate, that means you hit them where it hurts. That's count that up as a win. Is the way I look at it. It can be a lot to endure, and you're right. That's a difficult thing to square. Nobody wants to be bad-mouthed and criticized like that. But when you get into politics, I mean, if you get no reaction out of them, then that's, where'd that go? It's almost better to get the big, get the vitriol because you've hurt them somewhere. So
yeah, I will say one thing, and I would like to say this on the record.
Yes,
I haven't talked
please.
about it necessarily online, but they have come after my kids a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, that's awful.
And they're adults now. So there was one person, and I'm not going to repeat the accusation. There was one accusation that somebody put out, and I sent the screenshot to my son because his name was involved in the accusation, and I was like, I am so sorry, because they didn't ask to run for office,
Right.
and they knew, and they were supportive, and they knew that eventually he took it upon himself to reach out to that person and was like, get my name out of your mouth. Like,
Wow.
So I've been super happy to see my kids and the person deleted the tweets and apologized and, whatever. So it's great to have kids that are also resilient,
That's
through
great.
through the situation. But yeah, don't come for my kids, man. Like they don't,
You don't want to take on Mama Bear in that way at all, for sure.
and I would never, I don't, even adult children, I don't go after. So,
right. It's amazing that it even has to be said out loud. Don't go after people's kids, but that is the world we live in right now. Congrats on raising kids who know to stick with mom and what mom believes in.
Thank you.
And I'll further say that what you said earlier about not wanting to, or definitely not seeing quitting as an option, sounds like a quality you might want to have in your state representative, maybe.
Yeah, I think,
especially if you're joining a minority in that body, that's a great big whole other fight we're talking about. So best of luck to you. Sara McGee is running again down in the Houston area, District 132. We'll keep up with what you got going on, and it's great to talk to you. And
thank you. You too.
Be safe out there.
All right, thanks.
Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared, bold, progressive values, and that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. While we enjoy the support of hundreds of partners, chances are that you, dear listener, haven't joined the team yet. If you're a regular, let's get you on board right now at progresstexas.org. Chris Mosier for Sara McGee. We will catch you again next time.